Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. This will be a compilation of an older series of videos from 2018 with some additions in there as well, and the focus will be on the pentagram, so geometry, astronomy, music and arithmetic, and how the quadrivium and these ancient systems are embedded in ancient architecture through weights and measure systems, but through the quadrivium. Now, throughout the series, I will be looking at different parts. Now, pentagram, how it relates to sun, earth, and moon, but systems of measurement. I'll include that one at the very end. I'm not sure whether I will, but how the pentagram relates to the golden ratio, dimensional connections, again, sun, earth, moon connections, synodic, sidereal, and actually quite a bit more. I'll have to do an additional part to add to that at the very end. I think I'll divide them into two, but the whole series will be, because the runtime's already about 3, so I'm going to divide it actually into two pieces. But yeah, temperature, golden number, ancient sacred architecture, systems of measuring length, systems of measuring temperature, also systems of measuring weight, how it's also in religion and mysticism. Some geometry courses are in there as well, measurement of time and music. Now keep your compass and straight edge handy in this first half. I will also include a how-to video of how to draw a perfect pentagon, but also a perfect hexagon is 5 to 6 relationship, because that will be, if you want to draw it for yourself, there are many ways to do it. Many applications for it as well, artistic, but also just in pure geometry and measure systems as well. So if you've got a compass and straight edge, keep that handy, and there will be a section on how to draw the perfect system. And in this, when I put this, I'll break it into two. In the second compilation, I'll also include Albrecht Dürer's pentagram as well, because that's an imperfect pentagram, but there is a lovely set of connections back to the angles of this particular pentagram as well. So yeah, keep your compass and straight edge handy if you've got one. We'll do a drawing class through there as well. So hope you enjoyed it. It's quite a trip, because again we're covering the quadrivium, ancient architecture, ancient systems, weights and measure related to music, also to modern systems, even temperature, and it's quite a bit in there. Cheers. Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and I thought I'd do a quickie, but looking at the pentagram and the importance of it. So I'll put a link in the description. I did a video a while ago where we can, working off the vesica, compass and straight edge, and creating a perfect pentagon. I tested it in GeoGebra, and it works. It comes to a perfect pentagon, and therefore you have a whole bunch of very important fire connections, especially. Pentagon is one of these, or pentagram, a 5-pointed star. Very important in all sorts of ways, especially in the esoteric world, and there you have some illustrations of that. Also sort of much maligned and connected with other things, but it's the famous Eliphas Levi picture, but you see the pentagram, and this is one of the tools used by John Dee and Enochian magic. So you have a 7-pointed star, but in the center you have a pentagram, where it's very important in the esoteric world and those aspects. But my favorite way of looking at things is through geometry and measurement. For instance, time, measurement, length. That's one-dimensional. You can use it for area or for volume, so 2 and 3 dimensions, but also connections to geometry. And so compass and straight edge, and yeah, link will be in the description, and you can create a perfect pentagram using this. Well, actually creates a pentagram. It's just an awesome technique using the vesica. I didn't see it anywhere else, so I can, at least for the moment, I can take credit for it. But weights and measures and the pentagram, and that's what fascinates me the most, is these ancient connections. And so time, and you'll see temperature as well, but measuring by weight, the compass, measuring by degrees and measuring by length and how it applies. This will also apply to Sun, Earth and Moon and the measurement systems buried within the pentagram. And even with the stars, so Sun, Earth, Moon and stars, especially through precession or the Great Year, and how that is also nicely encoded in the pentagram. You see Mason charts, well, the pentagram being this important symbol, as well as measurement, as well as weights as well, part of the old craft. So the pentagram. If you draw one, what you have, so the golden number, 5, the golden ratio, you can't really put it down as a number. It goes on forever and ever. So numerically speaking, you can't express it, but you can express it perfectly through geometry, and that's one of the beauties of the golden number. And the best representation of a golden number is through the pentagon and the pentagram and these ratios that apply. So each side, it's like a fractal. Each relationship is based on phi, but the defining angles of a pentagram, so the sharp point is 36 degrees, and then we have this angle here, 72, which is also the heart angle of a pentagon, and 108 degrees. So these are the most important numbers in regard to a pentagram. 36 times 2 is 72, 36 plus 72 is 108. Now in trig, these bring you to the golden number. It's just a beautiful thing. It's embedded inside this pentagram. Now phi is so important throughout. It's one of the most important numbers, proportions out there. It really does define from the larger scale, from the macro hurricanes, but down to the micro, and including like plants and all sorts of things. Just golden proportion, golden number. Now it's also beautiful in math. So this is also a symbol for phi. So it's the usual symbol, a circle with a line straight down it. But phi equals 1.61803398. Phi squared equals phi plus 1. 1 divided by phi equals phi minus 1. It's in seashells, it's in pine cones. This is why it's so beautiful. Now, how does it apply to a compass? So let's just insert a pentagram. We can cut off the angles, and we have this number. So 360 or 0, 72, 144, 216, 288. So imagine 0 plus 72 plus 72 plus 72. And it's Harshad numbers, which are important in recreational number theory. Basically, you add the numbers up and they should be divisible by that number. So for instance, now this number 9 especially, so 72, 7 plus 2 is 9, 72 divided by 9 is 8, 144, 1 plus 4 is 9, 144 divided by 9 is 16, 216, 2 plus 1 plus 6 equals 9, divide that by 9 you get 24. Then we get to 288, and this is really special, one of the most beautiful numbers, I think, and that's 2 plus 8 equals 18. Now 1 plus 8 equals 9, but that's not a pure Harshad number or a Niven number, but 288 divided by 18 equals 16, so it is a Harshad number, or 360 degrees, 3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9, and again you can divide that down. So now this applies through most of the polygons, but not all of them. For instance, nonagon is a 40-degree hard angle, and so you'll see some videos where they say all geometry comes. No, actually not all geometry, some geometry, but the pentagon is included. So 72, Sun, Earth and Moon and stars. So precession, the Great Year, which is measured by there's a few ways of measuring it. One of the most important ways is the equinox, and but it's a 25,920 year cycle. So 1 degree of precession is 72 years. So Sun, the Earth, the Sun and the stars connect there. Now through measurement systems as well, such as the Ionic scale, as is shown on the Mason board, the Ionic column, one of these ancient Greek forms. But Salamis Stone, Mark Wilson Jones pointed out how this Ionic scale and the harmony in there, for instance, in the path. But anyway, the Sun, now the mean diameter, equatorial diameter, but Ionic scale, also the long foot. Now the long foot's been shown, well, or the Persian foot. There are even some applications who suggest it's in ancient stone circles, such as those in England. But again, that scale brings us to 72. So Sun. Now 1 league is 3 miles. 720 league is the diameter of a moon, 2,160 miles. which is we'll come back to, but also the Ionic and the Longfoot, where we see 72. So sun, moon, stars, and the Earth is reflected by this number. Very, very important in geometry. I already mentioned the pentagram, but if you consider the hexagon, we'll come back to this, this is an important feature. 720 degrees, so 120 degrees each corner of a hexagon, times by 6, you get 720. The vesica, of course, 120 degrees is 7,200 minutes. 72 degrees defines a pentagon, and already mentioned cosine 72 degrees and its connection to the golden number. Now, room temperature is said to be 72 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nice because that's 2953 Kelvin. If you saw the last bit, yeah, that beautiful number. Byzantine music, equal temperament, 72 connections, but ancient Roman weights, for instance, 1 sextula or 72 grains, weights and measures, temperature and weight, and we also saw, well, already measurement and geometry, but also measurement sun, earth, moon, and stars, as we see there. Now, it's also 720p, so you find that these harmonic numbers are important. We'll come back to this, but in screen resolution as well. It's still with us today. Ancient weights, measures, systems. What's old is new again. Now, at resting, there are 72 heartbeats per minute, which is a 5:6 ratio as well, because there's 60 minutes per second. So that's the 5 times 5/6, you get 72. Also said to be 72% of the human body is water. Both in ancient Hindu tradition, but also in the Mayans, where we have the Katun, 7,200 days, and also the Dvapara Yuga, which breaks down into the entry period, so 864,000 years. The diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, but anyway, 72 again, cross time. Now, Egypt was an important as well, so Osiris, there were 72 accomplices of Set conspired against Osiris. Thoth won every 72nd day for the moon. He was a moon god, so ancient Egypt, nice connections there. In the east and in China, so Sun Wukong, apart from 108 and other numbers, but he could make 72 transformations. Confucius had 72 disciples, and in Shaolin there are 72 postures in Big Luhan. 72 named guides, this is by Kirsch's drawing. 72 disciples were sent out by Jesus in Luke 12. 72 demons collected by King Solomon in, and that connects to Enochian magic and John Dee, by the way. 72 books in the Catholic Bible, and, well, 72 parts of a tetragrammaton, name of God, and this Shin, which, if you paid attention at the very beginning with those pentagram pictures and connection to rituals and stuff, Shin or fire being very, very important, but 72 parts or 216 letters, because 216 comes, so 216. But first, the number 144. The sun, in the Longfoot scale again, there are 1,440 minutes per day, and the moon. So that's a measure of time on the Earth, the sun, and the moon. Again, in ancient Roman weight scales, 1 Juella, 144 grains. And radio frequencies, especially here in Australia, they've done it very cunningly, but 1,440p. Screen resolution, once again. Now you'll find, so I mentioned that the nonagon, these degrees, if you get the degrees, it doesn't add up to 9, as we saw earlier, but still, 40 degrees is 144,000 seconds of the compass. The vesica and the so the outside angles of a hexagon, 240 times 6, 1440 degrees, and there are 14,400 seconds in the vesica, which is the same angle which defines a hexagon. 144 is a 12 Fibonacci number. Now this is one of the shortest papers ever written on Euler's conjecture, but on to the 5th power, 144 is very special. 144 to the 5th, bang, 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 bang. Isn't that lovely? Fibonacci numbers, so it's the 12th Fibonacci number, and it's also 12 squared, so 12 squared, 12 Fibonacci number. But what's really nice about it, okay, 3, 4, 5, but in the going across dimensions from the first to the second to the third dimension. But what's lovely about that is You carry that on to the fourth dimension in 6, you get 1440. Marks this number as very special, as are all of these pentagram numbers. Now, the octahedron is defined by 1440 degrees. If you add up all the angles contained in the Platonic solids, 14,400. The Mayan calendar and the Baktun, 144,000 days. The Satya Yuga, same thing, 144 being the one of the entrance period, the middle of it, and then the exit, 144. In the Bible, Revelations, and he measured the square, 12,000 furlongs. But okay, so the walls of New Jerusalem are 216 feet or 144 cubits. It's exactly the same number. Sometimes they say 216 feet or 144 cubits. But even Royal Babylonian scale, 144 in fingers, and area, it just replicates 144,000. 12 tribes times 12,000, you get the 144,000 mentioned in the Bible. But Royal Babylonian cubits, this goes back to the Ark of Utnapishtim as he describes the Ark, and that also just happens to connect to 144 in the first dimension and in the second dimension, and also a conversion rate there. So it just carries on and on. Rosicrucians, 144 octaves in their tradition, or 144 elements as well. Brings us back to the pentagram in 216, touched on that because the walls of New Jerusalem are 216 feet. And so a 360 degree compass, each degree is broken down into minutes, and there we get 21,600. So 216, 21,600. That's how you define the nautical miles in circumference of the Earth, 21,600. The width of the moon, 2,160 miles. Same number is years per age of precession. So we're entering the age of Aquarius, and we'll be in there for the next 2,160 years. And New Jerusalem, 216 feet. Octahedron, the cube, 2,160 degrees. And the vesica, 60 degrees, is 216,000 minutes. If you break down those, that just keeps going on. Lovely stuff. And again, back to the Shin and the Tetragrammaton, 72 parts or 216 letters, which brings us to the number 288. Okay, so 288. Units of measure, these ancient, like Ionic once more, and the long foot, as well as League, as we saw earlier, 288 measures of the sun. Now, in temperature, 288 Kelvin, said to be the average temperature. That's in the environment we live in, that's an interesting point, but people will contest it because of politics. But the Picton, so the Mayans, also the importance of 288. In tuning scales, Pythagorean, 288 for D, and it's also interesting if you keep adding up these numbers, such 51, 61, 71, you get 288. But what I find the most lovely thing about it is that it's a beautiful number across 4 dimensions. So if we go back, for instance, 216 is equal to 1 to the first times 2 to the second times 3 to the third. Well, 1 to the fourth times 2 to the third times 3 to the second times 4th to the 1 is 288, or 1 to the first plus 2 to the second plus 3 to the fourth plus 4 to the fourth is 288. These numbers have these remarkable properties which only exist within it, such as phi and all these harmonics, and they're just lovely. So 4D number 288, it's embedded in the center of all the architecture. It's just there, really, or 144 times 2, but 360 in geometry. So icosahedron, 3,600 degrees defines that. The 36 degrees, as we saw, as a pentagram number, 36, the golden number, pi minus 1 over 2. Pi minus 1 is equal to 1 divided by, phi minus 1 is equal to 1 divided by phi, one of those beautiful connections. Of course, the vesica, again, 3,600 minutes, so 60 degrees is 3,600 minutes, but also, well, a circle is defined by 360 degrees, but also a square or any rectangle, any four-sided poly will add up to 360 degrees. And 4 is an important reference, but so 360 degrees in the compass, and of course, so each second of the compass breaks down into 3,600 seconds. but also 3,600 seconds per hour of a clock and the compass coming together. It's again defining the diameter of the moon. The Tun in the Mayan calendar, 360 days, and Treta Yuga, 3,600 divine years, and 1296, so 1,296,000. There are 1,296,000 seconds in a 360-degree compass. Lovely stuff. The clock, the compass, these ancient systems, legends, all come and around these harmonious numbers. Now, it's also a beautiful number, and we'll come back. So triangular numbers, and 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, 36. Well, 36 is 100 in base 6, but just like we saw with 288, 1 to the second times 2 to the second times 3 to the second, 36, 1 to the third plus 2 to the third plus 3 to the third equals 36. So very similar to what we saw in 288, very similar to 216. 216, I think I didn't mention, 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. 6 times 6 or 6 squared is 36, so there's these nice connections too there. Now if you look at a pentagram and pentagon and the angles and so each angle a minute, how that breaks up into degrees and then into minutes and then into seconds, what you have is this 288 as well being the opposing angle from so 360 degrees minus 72 is 288, and also all these numbers when it comes to the harmonics chart, which again is just overflowing with sun, earth, moon, geometry, weights and measure systems, modern and ancient, and awesome connections going on there. So the pentagram, beautiful numbers defining so much with geometry, arithmetic, music and astronomy, joins them all in together in a wonderful way. But so now that's 5-pointed star, so over 6 over 5, which is his important ratio as well. If we look at the hexagon, we saw in the vesica and the hexagon these angles and these numbers appearing in there as well. So flower of life, seed of life creates a hexagon. The vesica creates the seed of life. From the vesica you can create a perfect pentagram with compass and straight edge, and this connects now to the 6 over 5 ratio. So there we see a seed of life creating a hex 6. It perfectly divides a circle up into 6 units. And that also, using that seed of life pattern, you also get the tree of life. Now that's next one I'll be touching in on that. But for instance, now regards especially to esoteric religious connections in the number 33 and the number 153 and the number 273. This actually all connects nicely once you understand the geometry of the 6 over 5 and you apply the seed of life onto the pentagram, and we'll come to that in the next episode. But that brings us to these beautiful numbers in themselves, carrying so much overloaded with importance in both the legends and in the symbols, but also in a sun, earth and moon measurable, tangible way. And just one of those things that connects them is in binary. 33 is 10001. A palindrome, it runs like race car. It runs the same backwards as forward. 153 in binary, 1001101, back and forth, and 273, 100010001. A palindrome again. This is only touching because the maths behind this in other numeration. So binary is like, let's call it base 2. We work in base 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Binary has two, ones and zeros, on and off switches is the basis for computing. But it goes much further beyond that in regards to palindromes and how they connect and run back and forth. And it's very, very exquisite, beautiful connections. And that's the pentagram and the pentagon contains. Once you sort of just get used to memorizing these few basic numbers that make up the pentagon pentagram, you actually start to have this wonderful system of other connections to the clock, the compass, weights and measure systems, beautiful math, cross-dimensional, sun, moon, temperature scales, music scales, cross-cultural importance of this number. Platonic Solids 2D, 3D, the Kabbalah, the Rosicrucian traditions, the Ark of Utnapishtim, or Preserver of Life, the oldest surviving flood legend, which is just, again, overloaded with all sorts of other symbols. New Jerusalem, and also just the Bible in general, the importance of this number 144. The Hindu traditions and the cycles of time. Platonic Solids, Fibonacci numbers and phi as well, and just in the fifth dimension 144, this is a screenshot of the shortest math paper written, and again just explaining this stuff across dimensions. Again, I was just saying it works, these numbers work across multiple dimensions in a beautiful, beautiful way. And even so, for instance, a nonagon, which is not a +9 number, it works just awesomely. The vesica, the hexagon, 6/5, screen resolution, ancient weights and measures, the time, the minutes per day, the sun and moon again, all comes back together. Solomon and Enochian magic, Bible, Eastern traditions, Western traditions, ancient Egyptian traditions, Mayans, Hindus, even biology, temperature again, music scales, screens resolution, geometry, sun and moon, precession, all emerging from this pentagram and these lovely numbers contained therein. So I'm going to cover, I'll finish it off in the next episode, but that 153, 33, 153 and 273, and just the genius of this and how it connects. Well, it's a nice intro, 153 there. That's, yeah, so cool, especially in triangular or the Tractus numbers, let's call them. Anyway, that's enough of this one. Hope you enjoyed. Pentagram, Pentagon. Have a good one. Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and I'll be doing part 2 and looking at the rather unique, interesting properties of a pentagram. Link in the description how to draw one by compass and straight edge, and you'd actually get a perfect pentagram. Therefore you get the pentagon, and therefore you get the perfect phi numbers. Now, even the way this construction works, you might get an idea that, yeah, it's very simple construction. It actually lays out all the points for you, built off the vesica, but because the vesica and the hexagon will be coming into this. So mathematically, geometry, astronomy, and music, there are lovely connections here in the pentagram. It also has, in a mystical, spiritual sense, very important emblem. But so that's the using the 5 points divided into 360. So therefore, in 72, 144, 216, 288 degrees. Covered those in earlier part. All the other properties that go into it, especially through weights and measures, and well, the quadrivium. But touched on 5/6, and very interesting construction when you, particularly if you do like the edge length of the pentagon is the same as the edge length as the hexagon. There's some really cool stuff that emerges from that. But both the pentagram and the hexagram, it's like on the Israeli flag, very ancient design. But these connections, especially through esoteric groups, Masons, for instance, are just an idea about 6/5 and how it's cool. But so the hexagon itself comes from the seed of life. So if you draw one circle and then you draw another circle with a center on the edge, each circle will mark the next circle, and you just follow that around till you got 7 circles in total. But it creates a perfect hexagon. That's why bees use it. It's just the most efficient use of yeah, just so much to be said about the power of and the importance of the hexagon. But from this seed of life, which is this ancient emblem, you can find ancient Egypt in the Osiris, across the world, it's a fundamental of geometry. So I've just overlaid that there, but we'll have a look at the seed of life and the hexagon as it emerges. So you can already, just by cutting through, you've now divided the circle into 6 sections. And then you just do a series of equilateral triangles that overlap, and you create the hexagram, the 6-pointed star. Now each trough, let's call it, between now gives you I want to draw 6/5 pentagram and hexagram. Recently I've been posting some stuff so regards to people such as Paracelsus and these alchemists who spoke about the theory of microcosm and macrocosm. You'll often find said that the hexagon and the pentagon with equal edge lengths also represents the microcosm and macrocosm. I haven't been able to find any connection to that going back to that period, but I want to draw the construction, and I'll put some links in the description where I've done some other, like I replicated Albrecht Dürer's Pentagon, which is not perfect, and I'll link that in the description. I believe that it was imperfect and for a very perfect reason. I did a variation on Dürer's construction as well. I'll link that in the description. But firstly, let's draw a geometrically, mathematically perfect one, and this relates to the golden number. So before I ramble on about the golden number, let's just do the construction, and we begin with a construction line. And I'm going to be using 2 compasses. I want to keep them as accurate as possible. So this one will be our basis, and we begin with a vesica. So without changing the compass settings, the center of a second circle on the edge of the first. Now, because where the circles intersect, we can draw a line there. Now, place your point. Because I'm rushing a little bit, I'm using thicker tips, and I want it to show up on the camera. I have tested this in GeoGebra. I'll link that in there as well. So we haven't changed the compass setting. I'm going to draw with our now on the center of that. And now what we have is a triangle. So that point, and that point. Now let's call this distance 1. So the half setting of the compass would be 1. Therefore the compass setting would be 2. Therefore this triangle, based on Pythagorean theorem, this hypotenuse of that right angle triangle has to be the square root of 5. Square root of 5 plus 1 over 2 equals 5, a golden number, 1.61803398887 off onto very long sequence. That's the golden number. And now because we have the square root of 5, I'm going to set my compass to there. Okay, so therefore, this is 0, therefore this distance here is 1. Square root of 5 plus 1, I'll draw that circle. Now because of the thickness of the tip, the illustration I'm going to show won't be perfect, but again tested it in GeoGebra. This is geometrically perfect if you construct it. So this distance from here to here is equal to the square root of 5 plus 1. Square root of 5 plus 1 over 2 equals 5. So therefore this distance is 2 phi, or 3.23 606, etc. 06, on and on it goes. So it's 2 phi. So now what you have to do is bisect this distance, and I'll be going back to the original compass, and that's why it's important to keep that original setting, Now you can just change as you go, but if I place this on the edge, I draw one more circle, and now we have all the points we need to construct a perfect pentagon. And those are this one, and this one. So put my point there, and I go through. I do the same again, and this time through that other triangle. And from here back to the center. And through that point. And again from the center, 0 point through there. And if you draw this very, very accurately, take your time using the thinnest point that you can use, this will be an absolutely perfect pentagon. Again, tested it. I'll put the links in there. I'll put links to the earlier versions of Jura and a variation I found of my own. Now, what you'll also notice without changing the compass, so we have the 5. We have a pentagon. If I was to join the points, we would have a pentagon. And what's nice about that is that the original compass settings, if done properly, should come back to the point to point of the pentagram. Again, I'm just, because I'm using thick points, this is going to affect it, but it works. So now if you put that, find the original center. So we already have that circle. And now I'll go to the top there, where those, as accurate as you can to get it where they intersect. If I was to draw another circle, it should match up and pass through those points. So now where that circle, those two intersect, again it should go through those points of the pentagram. And now we just really just draw a seed of life. Just keep following that around each time the circles cut across one another. You start to see the seed of life, the petals emerging there in the center. And one final circle. Where am I missing? This one, sorry. Where these intersect. And again, I can see I'm a little bit out, but I'm struggling with the tripod and not being as thin as a point and being as accurate as I can. But now we've created a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can draw out. Now we have a hexagon. This is one of the reasons why beehives work like this. It's the most efficient. Nature insists on it. It's just the most efficient use of space. And do I have okay, we can also now make a Star of David. So I'm going to create a series of, so one, then I skip one. Draw a line. Now I skip a line again. So I'm making an equilateral triangle. So now I have 1, 2, 3 points left. I just draw them together. Now we have a 6/5 construction, which is geometrically perfect. Again, I think Kershaw intentionally drew his wrong. He didn't want a 108 degree angle. He wanted some of those angles to be 109.2 for very good reason. I'll link that in the notes. We can just do a pentagon around there as well. Now with this 6 and 5, you can also now do, for instance, make a three-dimensional soccer ball, because a soccer ball pattern is just a series of hexagons and pentagons. Because they're geometrically perfect, it should work. There are templates out there where you can print these things out. Pentagon, closing a pentagram, and because of the nature of the pentagram, the edge length of the hexagon is equal to the edge length of the pentagon. And there we have it. Pentagon or hexagram. In those microcosm imagery by those famed alchemists, one of the reasons why this connection is, again, I couldn't find direct connections between the hexagon, but they would have you'd see in the images, they would have a man with his arm extended and his feet extended. Pardon my artwork, but that's the famous microcosm image, is to have the man there and the head, 2 hands, 2 feet to create the 5. That's a terrible drawing, I know, but that's one of the reasons why that connection is. But that's the geometry if you want to draw it and create it. There's all sorts of beautiful phi golden number info going on in here as well. So these are I'll put some links in the description to the alternative imperfect methods, and also why I believe that Albrecht Dürer's geometry, why he did his incorrectly intentionally to encode information. And you create the hexagram, the 6-pointed star. Now each trough, let's call it, between now gives you, and this actually matches up. So where these circles intersect, they cut through and they'll divide the circle up into 12 units, and you just add every second one to get an equilateral triangle. Again, another equilateral triangle. Now you've got a 12-pointed star, a dodecagram, I suppose you'd call it. And well, time as a reference to 12, this is a nice way to draw a clock, and it's now divided 360 degrees divided by 12 is 30 degrees, which is a nice reference to the pendulum. But anyway, but also it's like the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. Precession also comes into this, and you also get from that design, you get the basics for the Maltese cross, and also now between each one of these troughs, you can then further divide it down into half. You can actually carry this on to infinity, but you divide it into half again, and so now we have 24 sections, and you skip every one and then 3, and then on the 4th you add another equilateral triangle, another, and another. Now you have this 24-pointed star, which has that. Of course, it has the Knights Malta cross in there, but you also have this this variation, this Templar cross, and each one of these points, 24 divided by 360, gives you 15 degrees. So what we've done now is we've cut this circle up into 15 degrees, beginning with the 6-pointed star, the hexagram, 5 and the 6. So now I've overlaid it, and what I've done is got the point there on 0. But first consider back to these numbers, so 70 Harshad numbers, and how they're divisible by, so 72, 7 plus 2 equals 9, 72 divided by 9, etc. Now they all add up to 9, except for 288, that adds up to 18. It's still a Harshad number, but it's a super cool number in 4 dimensions, but it's separated on that aspect, so that sort of points it out as an importance. So now if we just run one of those centers and use 288 instead of 360 as the main axis, and now because we've divided, everything gets divided into 15 degrees, which makes this 270 degrees. Now this construction is just a series of overlaying equilateral triangles. So create an equilateral triangle. We can just use, again, this as the template. And what do we get? 33 and 153. So 33 degrees plus 1/3 of 360, or 120 degrees. That 33 plus 120 is 153. 153 plus 270 plus 120 is 273. So the pentagram, the 6/5 design, and how it leads to this. Now, Maltese crossed, Templar, and even this variation which I've seen, and until I did this overlay I didn't quite realise exactly, that's what's going on there. We also have the 12 signs. You could do many other things, but now this 33, 153, 273, and I'll go more into that in the next episode, but like this really is marks something out's going on here, because just to begin with, in binary, which goes back to Leibniz, but only was really found a valuable practical application in the computer age, binary code, 1s and 0s. They're all palindromes, like a radar or race car. It's the same backwards as forwards, and 33 in itself is a palindrome, but in binary it 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Sorry, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. 153 in binary, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. But palindrome again, back as the same backwards as forward. And in binary, so is 273, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. That's not this is just the intro to it. There's all these will blend back with the pentagram numbers, which have all that astronomy and mystical connections to the occult teachings and the esoteric traditions, and well, just so many other so many other aspects. And the clock and the compass and this geometry which emerges from it, and I'll do that in part 3, because already if you've got if you're familiar, 33 and 153 should stand out. 273 is this really overlooked but super powerful number in regards to metrology and just that, again, the esoteric traditions. So hope you enjoyed and got a kick out of that one. Again, it's just, it's all compass and straight edge geometry. It's it might look complex, but as it's, from simplicity, complexity emerges, and it's just, this is all, if you just run it backwards, especially this design here, it really just begins with a series of 7 circles to create that seed of life, which is nothing more than a vesica, which is just repeated around and around and around. And from there you get the clock and so many other aspects. Now it's freezing up a bit, but from the seed of life, from the pentagram, 6s and 5s, and all those lovely connections that run with it. Okay, computer's running a bit slow, but 72, 144, 216, 288, and of course a 360-degree compass, and the importance of this in so many aspects. So with that, hope you enjoyed and have a good one. Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and this will be part 3. So part 1 I went through, for instance, 360, 72, 144, 216 and 88, how you can get from the compass and the pentagram, and the lovely knowledge encoded in there. And at the second episode started to highlight, so this 33, 153 and 273, how it sort of connects with this, well, the 24-pointed star and the 12-pointed star, and from the seed of life. But now we'll just do an intro to 33, 153 and 273 and why they are quite special in this regards, and why it's, you know, it's not because you could sort of pick and choose, but why these ones stand out, and they're very profound in the same way that 72, 144, 216, 288 and 366 had these very lovely properties, how these numbers will connect to them. And so firstly, the number 33, I'll go a lot more into these, but just as intro, so it's a palindrome, just the same backwards as forwards. And so like race car is a palindrome, same backwards as forwards. This taco cat, even the name, so a nice little palindrome going on there. As I P, sir, I see Pisa. This is an example of a phrase that's also a palindrome. Laminate, pet animal. So in the ancient times, especially the Romans were really into them. They wrote some really long palindrome stories. If you want to look up palindromes, the longest, quite a bit going on there. Some words like the name Hannah, civic, level, madam, mum and dad are also palindromes. And there's also SOMS, if you ever see SOMMS, it was also a sound garden. I think I saw it on there. But that's also a palindrome. Satan, oscillate my metallic sonatas, and that was a song or an album title by Soundgarden. And but palindromes. So this is just a meme. So there are 10 kinds of people: those who understand binary and those who don't understand binary. And binary code, ones and zeros. You know, if you've seen Futurama, Bender's 1100. Anyway. Go back to the late 1700s and got Gottfried Leibniz, and he come up with the binary system. There you can see one of his, 1697, and binary code is computer programming. So very, very important. It's now it's also interesting. So there are 10 kinds of people: those who understand binary and those who don't. Well, in binary, 1, 0 is 2. So there are 2 kinds of people. So that's, if you've ever see that meme, but actually that's what it means. That's a little math joke there. But if we go back to the harmonics cards and the angles of the Pentagon, pentagram, how they're represented in this, I did a long, like these numbers are the ones that just reflect so much info, you know, just by this simple pattern. The numbers contained in it are just awesome. But let's look at this chart here on that side. Highlight that, and then you can see, so 1, 0 is 2, or 2 to the first. 100 in binary is 2 squared, or 4. 1000 in binary is 8 in base 10, or 2 cubed. So that's how, like, this binary code also connects. Nice little connection going on there as well. But back to binary, and so in binary code, this is important especially for computing. 33, which is a palindrome, is also a palindrome in binary. 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. 153 is a palindrome in binary. 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. 273 is a palindrome in binary. 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Now that's nice on its own that these particular 3 numbers are binary, but we look at hexadecimal or base 16. 153 is 99 in base 16. 273 in base 16 is 111. 111. Now 111 is, okay, it's a Hashad number as well, but we'll do that in the next episode. In base 38, 273 is 77, a palindrome, same backwards as forwards. In base 20, like as in the Mayan system, DD, that's also backwards as forward. In base 4, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, palindrome again. In base 9, it's 333. Now there's also some like base 90, but it's not generally accepted. But also in base 90, it might be worth, in some variations of it, it's not a solid form. But there's also some suggest, well, that 273 in base 90 would be 33, which is a nice same backwards as forwards, you know. But you see even how they build up, and especially this number 273 and this palindrome. So as IP, sir, I see Pisa. And now in next one I'll go, because these 33, 153, 273, they'll also come back onto these other 72, 144, 216 and 288, but that'll be for the next episode. But just as an intro, because just like 288, 72, 144, 216, also whether it's in geometry, arithmetic, music and astronomy, but also in old traditions and legends, these numbers are the same that are represented as well. And it's a lovely, call it coincidence if you will, but at the very least you study one aspect and all these other things emerge from it. That's why it's so potent, rather than being specialized just with a few numbers. And whether it's a hexagon or a pentagon, if you sort of just remember those basic components in there, so much bleeds from it. But in the hardcore, math and geometry, these same rules also lend to this, and well, that's why it's beautiful. It's built, essentially it's built into the nature of things. And anyway, so that I'll do more to come on this series. Just this one I could knock off fairly quickly. Anyway, have a good one. Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. This will be part 4 of this series focusing on the pentagram. And in this one, we'll be looking more at the mystical, spiritual, religious elements connected with this pattern. So, see the pentagram there and this connection especially to Shin, but also the tetragrammaton and the name of God written there. And then we have Shin, fire, but this also with these alchemical symbols as well. And as man is a measure of all things, this famous Baphomet image, and this one from John Dee with the 7-pointed star, but of course with the pentagram in the center, and especially in Hollywood and modern Wiccans, it's very important emblem either way. So we began really earlier parts, to really get a sense of where we come from. Those links will be in the description, but these particular sets of numbers and how they join up in black, the ones defining the pentagram, and how we come to this 33, 153 to 73 connection. But we'll be focusing on those in this one. And so just as an example, like in pure math, like the palindromes and how these numbers are related and have these nice connections. And yet, especially binary and palindromes just to begin with. And that goes to Gottfried Leibniz. But so we begin with 33, so 33 devas in the Vedic religion, 33 gods on Mount Meru. Mongolian shaman have 99 Tengri, but they have 33 chief gods. King David, 40-year reign, and this connection with 40 will become, because for instance 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days and nights of Jesus, 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days of nights and days of rain in the Noah flood story, 40 years in the wilderness after in Exodus, but of those 33 years he ruled from Jerusalem. Jesus was 33 years old when he died. There are 33 beads on an Islamic prayer necklace, prayer bead, 33. Sometimes there are 99, and there are 99 speakable names of Allah as well in the Islamic tradition, which is a nice little connection there with the 99 as well. 33 bones, including a fused ones on the spinal column, but it comes especially with this very important number in Freemasonry. So for instance, the House of a Temple in Washington, there are 33 ionic columns, each of them 33 feet high, and of course that's the headquarters of 33rd degree Freemasonry in the US. Very important number in these connections with NASA, for instance, Buzz Aldrin and the 33rd degree. Even runway 33 is angled at 330 degrees. That's in Cape Canaveral. And the Saturn V rockets were 33 feet wide. Now I could do a whole list of ancient places, modern places, and the importance of 33 feet. For instance, in Harappa, the isles in the granary, but also in Mohenjo-Daro, Egypt, ancient England. So just list is really endless how much is 33. Also interesting to note, one Californian Vara was 33 inches. Sir Thomas Tresham, very famous occultist, but this, the Rushton Triangular Lodge in England, 33 feet wide on each side, and there are 33 letters in the inscription. But also in Uruguay, so there's even a basilica there, the Virgin Mary of the 33s, but the 33 Orientals, in Uruguayan independence leaders and Freemasons from the Oriental Lodge. So there's even a state called 33, or the state of 33. The capital city, 33, or 33 City, is almost exactly on the 33rd degree south, and even the postcode 33,000, which is a nice sort of link, and just how often this repeats through. Now, the American dollar, 32 feathers on one wing, 33 on the others. This 32-33 connection is very important in especially esoteric traditions, and we'll see that in a moment. So the UN flag, 33 sectors. The 33rd is the circle in the center surrounded by 32. So this 33 central point around with 32, because this goes back to the ancient Portolan mapping system, which is very lovely in geometric terms. But so instead of longitude and latitude, how we do now, they worked it out a different way for navigation, but they had the 33rd central point surrounded by 32 markers. Now this is repeated in cathedrals everywhere. Just as an example, St. Paul's Cathedral, 32, the rays around the 33rd central point. The same thing in Astana, the Pyramid of Peace. Even on their flag, really just a huge list to go into that. But also think of it in a three-dimensional sense in a soccer ball. So, okay, we get pentagons, pentagrams, and the hexagon, which was covered earlier episodes. Now, to make them into a soccer ball, you need 32 panels surrounding the 33rd central point. Hexagons, pentagons, sixes and fives, as we saw in the earlier episode, how we got originally to this 33, 153, and 273 pattern. This lovely geometry which goes on there, weights and measures, geometry, but also these more mystical connections. So very, very short list of 33 and the importance of it in the big religions, smaller shamanistic traditions, weights and measures, and from the ancient to the modern days, just touching on that. So 33, and the next one is 153. So in the Baha'i faith, there are hidden words, 82 in Persian or 71 in Arabic, 153 hidden words in total. A very famous reference from the Bible, and again, we'll come back to all of these. I'm just doing a list just to show the reflections that they go through from esoteric to the more well-known religions. But in John 21, Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have caught." This is from the miraculous draught of fishes. "Bring some of the fish you have caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled a net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. So it's interesting because there are certain numbers that just get repeated, especially in the Bible, for instance. But they specify why 153 fish. That this is sort of it's not just chosen out of thin air. I'll get to it later. But for instance, the square root of 153 is the number of full moons per year. If you draw a vesica, which creates a square root of 3, the best whole number ratio is 265 divided by 153. There are really a lot of connections, but we're just touching on them. So St. Paul's School in London originally started in 1509. St. Paul's, we saw St. Paul's Cathedral with that. Even in the roof, it's the 32 to 33. But the motto was, the school originally provided education for 153 children of all nations and countries indifferently. Now, I'm spelling nations as they did. Now, 153 children. Now, the street numbering system they moved to school. Street numbering system was changed in 1884, becoming 153 Hammersmith Road. If you just if you go to this school, you're pretty, I think my better half mentioned to me that everyone in this school even has a Wikipedia page. This is like you go to that school, it's like an expressway to fame. But you also see, because it's so important in the tradition, Christian tradition, 153 feet high and long in this church here in India, and you'll also see it in Washington, the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. 153 yards long, the dome's 108 feet wide. Like the whole church and these esoteric traditions, especially in the architecture, through weights and measures, they constantly and repeatedly embed these numbers. It's like there's a rule: you're not allowed to build one of these cathedrals or basilicas without incorporating specific measurements, but also specific, more so specific numbers, because you can make it slightly, as long as you keep it on that scale, on a certain scale, what you have is a reflection in all these really important ancient and modern architecture coming back to these very, very important numbers. Now, for instance, the Sydney Masonic Centre, 33, as we saw earlier, having this very important connection, but even there's a sculpture on the wall. It's 9 panels high, 17 wide. That's 153 panels. Again, I'll be coming back to 153, 33, 273, just getting some of the, let's say, spiritual, mystical connections in regards to this. So 33, 153, and now 273 in the Book of Numbers in 33, and for the redemption of 273 of the firstborn of the people of Israel, over and above the number of male Levites. Now, Levites is also an interesting connection, especially in regards to the temple, Solomon's temple, but also the stone the builders rejected, this very important theme in Freemasons and ancient Masons, going back to the legend of Hiram Abiff, King Hiram, who come to Jerusalem, and so to build Solomon's temple, only priests were allowed to enter the holy precinct, and so they had to train priests to be masons, and King Hiram trained him, and then he was eventually betrayed and killed. They were trying to get his secrets, but what's interesting is, like in this, in Isosophy or Gematria, that Hiram Abiff, the stone which the builders refused, is become the headstone of the corner. Did a series on cornerstones as well, and how important they are in churches and other buildings. A cornerstone ceremony, especially usually conducted by Masons. It doesn't have to be a Masonic building, whether it's courthouses, major public buildings. They tend to get Masons in there. But long as Hiram Abiff, the stone the builders refused. Okay, that's the stone the builders refused. And a few other interesting connections as well in regards to 273. So these numbers themselves are beautifully, intricately, spectacularly connected back to 72, 144, 216, and 288. So it's not just cherry picking 33, 153, because it's, with a bit of geometry you could specify any of these angles, but we'll come back to it more, because it's not just in the legends and the traditions. The pure math and geometry and even weights and measure systems all come back to this and beautifully connect all these systems back together. But that will be in the next few episodes. Yeah, but it really is pretty. I've been doing this for more than a few years now, looking into this, and it never ceases to amaze me how much is hidden in plain sight, but how much of our let's call it secular weights and measures and architecture is just not hinting at this. It is a standard. It is necessary. Major public buildings, whether cathedrals, town halls, parliamentary buildings like the Congress building in the US, Supreme Court building, they all contain this information, and it's just. It's pretty extraordinary, and it comes from the pure math, pure geometry, which would go to suggest that these how important because the rules of geometry and number are, let's just say, divine rules, and so it should not be no surprise that not just Western traditions but other ones come back to these specific numbers because of the importance of them. It's nature is defining, nature is telling us these are this is how you do it. And unfortunately, it's a lovely, it's a beautiful thing, but it could be like a sword. You can use it for good, you can use it for evil, but the thing is, it is embedded into nature. The laws of math and geometry just lead to these sorts of things, and these numbers are spectacular in a pure factual sense. Whatever philosophy you go for or attach, if you just follow the patterns of nature, they will lead you to these sets of numbers. And so with that, I hope you enjoyed and have a good one. A lot more to come, and the next ones will be really going into some really, really crazy connections, but measurable, tangible stuff. So have a good one. Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and this will be part 5 in this series. We've been focusing on the pentagram and this interesting geometry that comes from it, and we'll be going through and screenshot. This is a photo from New Acton in Canberra, just reminiscent of that interstellar in the 4th dimension, because that will be the theme. So let's look at the 4th dimension. Claude Bragdon, very important architect, also a theosophist, and so the Platonic Solids, 3 dimensions, classical architecture, but also this theme of dimensionality. And for instance, one of his illustrations as well, the square, as in square of or area, 2nd dimension, 3rd dimension the cube, and then the 4th dimension or hypercube, the tesseract. And this will be a theme in this particular episode. I'll put links in the description to a primer of higher space, or the 4th dimension, written by Claude Bragdon. He talks about it in the mathematical sense, because as his mathematics is a handwriting on the human consciousness of the very spirit of life itself. But he also connects the 4th dimension into a more mystical, theosophistic type of thinking. But back to this diagram that we've been building up, and particularly these angles and these numbers. So previous episode 33, 153, and 273, and how they connect, especially through religion and mystic traditions. That was the previous episode. But prior to that, I mentioned Harshad or Niven numbers as well. These very special numbers. These going back to even part 1, 360, 72, 144, 216, and 288. How they also have these very important connections. They're built into systems of weights and measure, but also into natural cycles as well. Wonderful stuff. It's a coherent system defined by nature, but also replicated in the architecture and the mystic spiritual traditions as well. So Harshad number or a Niven number is divisible by the sum of its digits. So 360, we can just ignore the 0. So 3 plus 6 is 9, and 36 divided by 9 is 4. Now 360 divided by 9 is 40. We'll come back to that in the next few episodes. 72 is also a Niven number. 7 plus 2 is 9. 72 divided by 9. 144, same thing. 216, same thing. And 288, same thing. Now all of these add up to 9. 288 adds up to 18. Now you could reduce 18 down to 9, but strictly speaking, a Harshad number or a Niven number is by the sum of its digits, so you have to stick with 18. Now 33, so 33, 153, and 273. Well, 33 is not a Harshad or a Niven number. Neither is 273, but all these numbers do connect in an exquisite way if you think 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th dimension. Now 153 is a Harshad or a Niven number. 1 plus 5 plus 3 is 9. 153 divided by 9 is 17. So 9 times 17. So all the 9 times tables. So 1 times 9 is 9, obviously. 2 times 9 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. 9 times 4 is 36, 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 in base 10 has this special quality where the digits will always reduce back down to a 9. So that's one of the reasons why this is happening, and it's just one of those built into base 10. Now 153 is also a triangular number, so we begin with 1, and then we have 1 plus 2, or you could also apply this to the Pythagorean tetractys or the tetragrammaton in Kabbalist tradition as well. But 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. These are the triangular numbers. And what happens if we go down? Now 36 is also a triangular number. What happens if we go down? Well, what we get is the 17th triangular number is 153. 9 times 17 is 153. So there's the first of these nice little connections between 153. It is a very special number. That's why previous episode I meant like how it's mentioned so important connections. Now, so 153, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, etc., plus 16 plus 17, 153. Now, how does this connect? Well, what we'll find is that this number will and the others will all blend together. This is why they're so important in mystic traditions, because they're very beautiful, special numbers. The handwriting, as Bragdon said, the mathematics is like the handwriting on the universe, and these are another interesting thing in regards to triangular numbers. So the fifth triangular number is 15, but instead of adding them, we multiply them. So 1, then 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. Now that's also what makes 6 a very special number. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. 1 times 2 times 3 equals 6. In the perfect numbers, 6 is the most perfect number. And also, yeah, it's nice. But anyway, so 1 plus 2 plus 6, 1. Okay, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 is 24. 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 is 120. You add these first 5 up, you get 153. So triangular numbers we add, and here we're multiplying them, and we get 153 emerges as well. Now in the Vesica Piscis, Vesica Pisces, the best, so strictly speaking, the ratio of width to height of the mandala, or the almond in the center, is the square root of 3 exactly. Now the best whole number approximate of that is 265 over 153 is the square root of 3, best whole number approximate. So if square root of 3 is 1.7320508, 1.7320508, but you see how close it is there. Now that's up to the 5th or 6th decimal point. If you're using any real world application, if you can get it to 4 or 5 decimals, you know, in the real world, that's as good as you're going to ever have to get. But the vesica is also, because it's 2 equilateral triangles, so that would be from this point to there, equilateral triangle, and the same underneath, which is why the common, like the set square we use in a mechanical technical drawing kit, is at a ratio of 1 or 153 to 26. That's the best whole number approximate. But in the actual tech drawing kit, this is 1 to exactly the square root of 3, because this is, if 153 here, this is exactly twice that. So a 1 to 2 ratio, therefore the actual set square is exactly the square root of 3, but as a whole number approximate, that's why 153 is so important. Now the vesica, 153 fishes caught in the net, but also when you see in Christian art, this mandala, this shape here in the center as the mandala or the almond shape, you'll often see Jesus depicted in there as well. So there's a nice connection. And even like Chartres Cathedral, they have Euclid, Pythagoras, and these other masters of the quadrivium on there. But that's another connection to 153. But now triangular numbers. Now how does 153 connect to 33? 33 is the largest positive integer that cannot be expressed as a sum of different triangular numbers. You can't add triangular numbers up and get, well, 33. So 33, you cannot do it, just like 33 is not an Hashad number. Now, the lowest narcissistic number is 153. That's a number which is equal to the sum of its digits cubed. And now we get the third dimension in cubes. Now keep in mind the third power, the cubes. 1 cubed plus 5 cubed plus 3 cubed equals 153. It is the lowest narcissistic number. This is the highest number, largest number that cannot be expressed in triangular numbers, which is a 153 being triangular. But let's stick with this power. Now, Diophantine numbers. Now, 33 is the smallest that cannot be expressed as a cubed plus b cubed equals c cubed, where a, b, and c are integers or whole numbers. That's what it, so there's a nice cubed and cubed. Nice little connections again. Now, what is also special about 153 is that it connects all of these numbers here, every single one of them. And how? In the third dimension, as in cubes. Now, there's a special, like up to about over 2000, it doesn't always apply, but any number which is divisible by 3, as in the third power, will break down. So, for instance, 36, 3 cubed plus 6 cubed, or 27 plus 216 is 243. 243, 2 cubed plus 3 cubed, 4 cubed plus 3 cubed, 99. 9 cubed plus 9 cubed, 148. Well, they'll always reduce down to 153. And that's where they'll stop, because 1 cubed plus 5 cubed plus 3 cubed, 1 cubed plus 5 cubed plus 3 cubed equals 153, the lowest narcissistic number. Now that's 36. Now, because 33 is divisible by 3, exactly the same thing happens in the third dimension using its digits, just like in the Harshad numbers, Niven numbers, but in the third dimension this time, what do we get? 153. This will just repeat. So 72, same thing. 144 will reduce to 153. 216 will reduce to 153 in the third dimension, just a reminder. 273, it's divisible by 3, it will reduce to 153 in the third dimension. So will 288. So all these numbers are nicely linked in the third dimension, just like 33 connections, and it comes back. So third dimension, 153 being like a number that unites them all. Now, mentioned already the 3D connections, triangular number connections to 53. Now, what's special about 288 is that it is, I like the term, it is married to 153 in the third dimension, because 1 cubed plus 3 cubed plus 5 cubed equals 153. Up to 6. 6 is the most perfect number where we saw earlier. Yeah, if you remember, 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. 1 times 2 times 3 equals 6. Okay, but so odd numbers in the third dimension add to 153. Even numbers in the third dimension add to 288. 288 and 153. Now, well, okay, back to 33 in the cube. So, yeah, it's just lovely stuff. Now, third dimension, as we've seen, joins all of these, especially you've 153 and even triangular numbers, just great stuff. Now, 216 in the third dimension. 1 times 2, 1 cubed times 2 cubed times 3 cubed equals 216. 360. 1 squared times 2 squared times 3 squared equals 36. 1 cubed plus 2 cubed plus 3 cubed equals 36, the third dimension. 144. Now this 3, 4, 5, as in, just think Pythagorean, but okay, 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third equals 140. 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 3 to the 5 to the third plus 6 to the fourth, so now we're into the fourth dimension, equals 1440. Exactly 10 times that lovely nice little connection in there. Now so we're in the fourth dimension now, and 288. Beautiful, perfect 4D number, because 1 to the fourth times 2 to the third times 3 to the second times 4 to the first is 288. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, multiplied, 288. 1 to the first plus 2 to the second plus 3 to the third plus 4 to the fourth equals 288. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, plus 1, 4, 2, 3, 3, 2, 4, 1, multiply. Fourth dimension. Come to me to the fourth dimension. I'll put the link in the description, because I do, if you're into your numbers more, and this sort of, yeah, because this connects to the harmonic numbers as well, we mentioned earlier, 108, 216, 432, 864, all of them. And they all come when you think first, second, third, and fourth dimension. Beautiful, wonderful. It's written into nature. You know, you can't make this up. These are the laws of geometry and math, and they're embedded in the mystical, esoteric, spiritual, religious traditions across the world because of the beauty of these things. That the universe forces us towards. You see, we can't change it. These are the laws which bind us all together. Anyway, with that, more to come. Hope you have enjoyed. Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. This will be part 9 on the pentagram, and we're looking at the golden ratio and the connections there. So these classic images of the pentagram, which is facing upwards, and the connections, because there's lots and lots of, you know, both in the measurement sense, but also has used in religion, mysticism. Now we'll be introducing the inverted pentagram, usually with this goat image is often connected to it, not always, just often. But that's sort of, you know, the elephant in the room. This is usually connected with, well, Satanism, but there's a divine proportion. But that doesn't matter whether whatever your religious spectrum is, so you can be an atheist as well, it doesn't matter. What's important is the measurable truth. So what do I believe in? Well, that's not well, that doesn't matter if you believe or if you don't. What's important is that it can be measured. Now, if I had gods, I would invent, is that true? The Indo-Etruscan goddess of fact-checking, and my devil would be making stuff up. But who are important for me? Well, Thoth, Hermes or Mercury, ancient gods of knowledge and weights and measures, and that's what I think is the important part. And back to the pentagram, and we'll be introducing the inverted pentagram. So there's this image where I've been working off, and we've also had this 33, 153, 273, well, lots and lots to come. But now if I was just to simply draw lines from the points and go through the trough, let's call it, not sure what the exact term for that is, and I was to do that, then I would mark out 5 new spots on the compass, and with that I get an inverted pentagram. That's where you get the often depicted with the connected with the goat's image, but also we have the up-facing pentagram. But with the inverted pentagram now, what we have is another series of angles, 36, which is 360 or 0, but now we have 36, 108, 180, 252, and 324, and this will continue with this pattern. I'm going to be going back to some of the parts, because now it'll expand on that and connect to it. And so the inverted pentagram is also very, very important. Now, firstly, we've introduced this angle 324. Well, that is one of the defining angles of a pentagram itself. So the tip of the pentagram is 36 degrees, 36 degrees. That creates what's called sometimes a golden triangle. So 36 is the point. This would be 36. And each corner would be 72, 36 and 72, 324 on the outside. So we start to see how these angles which divide up the compass also are defining angles of the pentagram itself. It's like tessellation. It's, you know, it keeps repeating. Now, the pentagon. So, for instance, inside there we have a pentagon on the inside, and that angle here is 108. 108 degrees. Therefore, 360 minus 108, so the opposing angle of that is 252. 252. So now with these, now even a triangle, so 36 degrees as we see here is the sharp point, and then we have 72 and 72. All triangles add up to 180 degrees, whether it's an equilateral triangle, 60, 60, 60, 45, 45, 90, all triangles add up to 180. So these numbers, amongst many others, but we see the connections there. But what's also interesting is that 252 degrees in trig gives us negative 1 over pi divided by 2. So this is a nice connection to the golden ratio, phi, the golden number, the divine proportion. Beautiful, one of the, if not the most beautiful number that there is. Now also, so sticking with the pentagram or pentagon, so the interior angle of a pentagon is 108. The heart angle, which divides each of the points, is 72. Therefore, the opposing angle is 288. So, sticking with now with phi, the golden number, the divine proportion, many other names for it, but it's very, very important. Now, sticking with trig, so for instance, 108 degrees, cos and sine, golden number appears. 72 degrees, again, one of the defining numbers of pentagons and pentagrams is phi over 2 in cosine. Cosine 36, phi minus 1 over 2. Now, okay, we'll get back to that, but the beauty of phi and how it connects with beautiful, very simple arithmetic and creates now the pentagon or the pentagram. So you have what is phi 1.618033987 ... goes on forever. Now you can calculate it easily on your calculator. The square root of 5 plus 1 divided by 2 gives you the golden number. So even that square root of 5, lovely stuff, plus 1 over 2. As over 2 minus 1 and also over 2 and anyway, we'll get to that in a second, the beautiful perfect math of it. Now technically you can't write this because this number goes on forever and ever. So to represent it as a number is quite difficult. But you can represent phi in geometry perfectly, and you do it through the pentagon and the pentagram. So these angles which make up the pentagon and well, they're all including 252, but anyway, just the interior ones, 36, 72, 108, 36, 72, 108. Golden number in trig. Now, the ratios of each portion is a golden ratio. So, for instance, if red is 1, then yellow is phi. If green, if blue is 1, then green is phi. If green is 1, then red is phi. Perfect representation of this golden number, this divine proportion, which is so important in nature, a defining feature of nature from the macro down to the micro. Now here's some examples of phi in nature where you have these special spots. So whether it's in, you'll find it in galaxies, hurricanes, flowers, the angles of which leaves are formed on plants, shells, pine cones. You can see that spiral. Goat's horns, cactus. It's now the best way, the most easiest way to do it is with the Fibonacci numbers. Now that's Fibonacci numbers will reduce down. The more you expand the Fibonacci series, the closer and closer you get to the golden number. But for instance, the phi is in our very DNA, and by that, so as Fibonacci numbers, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, okay, 13, Fibonacci, 21, Fibonacci, divided 21 by 13, you get a very close to, now this is, how did they measure angstroms? So even there's this margin of error when you get into measures. Now that's the difference between the helix there. But also the width of the helix to each spin is 21 to 34. So 13, 21, 34. They're Fibonacci numbers. So that's, but another way to represent that is that it is 1 to phi. The width of the helix to each spiral is 1 to phi, built into our DNA. For light spectrum, now we have the visible light spectrum where we can see, and then we have down below, down to gamma rays up to radio waves. So is where we can see, but this creates a 1 to phi ratio. In plants you'll see it in what's called the golden angle. Now 137.5 to 222.5, which is, well, 55, so 1.6181818, but there is slight variations in this, so these are very close approximates, and in the plant world it doesn't always work in this perfect math sense, but that's a 1 to phi ratio. Now, how does that work? So, for instance, here's another example. So, if you start with the tip of one leaf and then you go to the next one, that's 137.5, 137.5, and it just keeps expanding out. So the plants, even so, the sunflower is a classic example where you see these Fibonacci golden number spirals, but even because the ratio of growth in plants so often comes back to this golden number, divine proportion. Now, I mentioned about phi minus 1. Okay, well, this is why one of the reasons why phi is so beautiful. So phi minus 1 equals 1 over phi. Phi minus 1 equals 1 divided by phi. Phi plus 1 equals phi squared. Phi plus 1 equals phi squared. Okay, now this goes on infinitely through the dimensions. So, for instance, 2 phi plus 1 equals phi cubed. 2 minus 1 plus 1 divided by, as we saw with those cosine, this only happens with phi. This is the only, and this just happens to be the ratio of growth in plants and the spirals in massive storms and galaxies and light and our DNA and shells and horns and, well, again, the sunflower spiral, which has this growth rate of phi in all over nature, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. And the best representation of phi, the golden number, and his perfect number, is through not just geometrically the pentagram, but also the angles in there, which connect back to trig and the math. Measurable, tangible stuff, which is also repeated in nature. So why is it so important in religion and mysticism, the pentagram? Well, what could be more deserving of this interest? And that's the pentagram, whether it's inverted, the measure systems, and okay, it just happens to be freezing, but okay, so beautiful number, beautiful shapes, defining nature. So why is the pentagrams connected with, usually spooky, evil stuff? Well, if you go for that, well, I'd say definitely not, because this is actually, as what I call it, the divine proportion. It is built into nature. It's built into creation, if you want to put it that way. And from the macro to the micro. So unless the devil made the universe, therefore he would be God, would he not? So, or God made the universe, and the divine architect, great architect, and what he's done with the geometry is put this into nature. He's put it into the geometry. He's put it into the math. And this is why the pentagram, amongst now all the shapes, there's lovely connections with all the geometry, but the pentagram stands special, very, very, very special amongst all of this. And through these ancient systems of 360 degrees, this is what emerges from it, and trig, and yeah, it's built into nature. And that's why it's so important in regards to time, measurement, geometry, and nature itself. So the pentagram, whether it's up or down, it contains the divine proportion. It's a tangible, measurable thing. And now there's a lot of these internet pundits who would say that this, don't study your geometry or because this is satanic or whatever. Well, this is that's actually evil to say that, in my opinion. It's keeping people dumb, because it's built into us. Literally built into us. It's literally built into the universe. So the pentagram, whether it's upwards or whichever direction it is, all these numbers that come from them, all these proportions, built into nature, it's divine. Have a good one.